Part 94. The Koi Fairy Wife is Sweet as Honey, Love from the Koi Goddess. Author, Sushao Zheji. Chapter 932. It is said that the target of Tiandao's attack was Kongli, the Lord of the Stars, but his Taoist companion did not know what to do, and blocked the catastrophe for him, and almost lost his soul. The Star Lord almost didn't go crazy. The things Tiandao did were also completely exposed. After that, it was the darkest period in the entire Chaos God realm. Tiandao's intentions were exposed, it simply stopped hiding, and it was completely smashed. Those who are willing to submit to it will live in peace, and those who are unwilling to submit, whether they are ancient gods or gods born later, will be punished by heaven. Curse. The powerful gods may be able to resist, but the weaker gods can't resist the power of heaven's punishment at all. At that time, Jinli and Lu Zhenjia had already expressed their hearts to each other. If there is no such thing, they may have to tell the world in a few thousand years and officially become Taoist companions. Lingshan, where Jinli lived, was under her jurisdiction for thousands of miles. It's okay at night, with the blessing of the night god, even the way of heaven can't do anything. But once the day comes, night god is not an opponent of the law of heaven relying on the law. There is no peaceful place in the entire Chaos God realm, thunder is rolling everywhere, and bloody winds are everywhere. Jinli saw more than once that the creature who was still smiling and joking with him a few days ago turned into a wisp of dead soul the next time he met. The Lingshan Tianke where she was located was blessed by her and Lu Zhenjia's divine power, and it was barely calm. But in more places, extremely tragic scenes are being staged. The ancient gods came out one by one, discussing strategies to deal with heavenly Dao. But after thinking about it a lot, there is nothing to do with it for a while. The way of heaven is not a god, it has no entity, and is recognized by the laws of heaven and earth. Law is the root of the existence of Chaos God realm, and it also exists without thinking and without entity. Heaven doesn't know what it has done to deceive the law's perception, and the law doesn't know what it has done, so whoever opposes heaven and kills the opponent, law will only think that heaven is implementing the rules. Not only does the law ignore it, it even borrows strength and power to the Dao of heaven to make it more convenient to do things. And the way of heaven with the blessing of laws is equivalent to possessing infinite power. He has nothing to fear, and no one is his opponent. However, in 100 years, dozens of ancient gods fell, and more than half of the creatures in the entire Chaos God realm were killed or injured. Most of the remaining half have surrendered to the Dao of heaven and are willing to be driven by it. There are only two fates waiting for the ancient gods. One, if he and Tiandao continue to consume like this, they will either think of a way to fight against it, find out its weakness, and completely seal Tiandao, or be killed by Tiandao if they find a chance. 2. It is to wait for the law to see the face of the way of heaven clearly, and wait for the law to strike and kill the way of heaven. The first one, no matter which possibility it is very difficult. Waiting for both parties, the most likely result is to consume it without a deadline. And every extra moment, the situation will be worse for the creatures of the Chaos God realm. The second possibility is even more delusional. No one knows what Tiandao has done to the law, nor do they know when the law will wait until the law is aware of Tiandao's conspiracy. Jinli couldn't wait any longer. Because the way of heaven was pressing every step of the way, both she and Lu Zhenjia felt the urgency. She can protect herself, but all beings in Tianke cannot. She secretly made a decision. Asterisk. Abyss of Gods. The Koi Fairy Wife is Sweet as Honey, Love from the Koi Goddess. Author, Sushao Zheji. Chapter 933. Jinli, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly changed his expression, his eyelids trembled a few times, and he opened them suddenly. Her heart was beating fast, as if it was going to pop out of her chest. Confused and heavy thinking. She took a deep breath and finally understood what the bead was. She also finally understood what she had lost. That beat is her previous life. It is all the memory and divine power of her previous life. No wonder, she never had Lugenja in her memory, she thought it was just a piece of her memory missing. Unexpectedly, it wasn't the lack of memory, but her whole being, who died once and came back again. No wonder, Father Tiendeo let himself enter the abyss of gods. The abyss of the gods is the cemetery of the gods. Living gods are not allowed to enter, but what about those who have died once? Her memory ends when she protects all beings in the Chaos God realm for thousands of years at the cost of divine power and luck. But what happened later? What happened? Why did the deity become the way of heaven? What about the previous heavenly Deo? How did I survive again? Besides, after he died, what happened to Lugenja and him? She had too many doubts, and she wished she could rush out and ask Lugenja to clarify. Don't worry, a lazy voice came from beside my ear. Jinli looked up. It was Frost and Cold Sword Master. She was still sitting on the big rock with the jug of wine in her hand. The soul orb in your body is your tens of thousands of years of cultivation and memory in your previous life. You have refined it in such a short period of time, Frost and Cold Sword Master asked. Jinli shook her head, not yet, but I know you can't wait to run up to your Taoist partner and question him right now. It's better to give him another hug and kiss, right? I understand, Shuanghan sighed, but, are you sure, he did it for you? What, will I really tell you? Jinli was taken aback for a moment, then came to his senses. Yes. She could ask, but would Lugenja really know how to say it? Shuanghan looked at her dazed look, changed her posture, sat up with one leg bent, and said leisurely, so, if you want to ask him, why don't you just ask me? Jinli looked at her blankly, ask you? Shuanghan, well, otherwise, why did your Tiendeo father ask you to come to me? Didn't he just ask you to chat with me and learn the truth by the way? Jinli. Is the truth actually incidental? However, she knew that Sword Master Frost and Cold was not a casual teller, so she said respectfully, Sword Master Frost and Cold, please tell me the inside story. Shuanghan thought for a while, and said, it's been a long time since I said this, let me think about it first, and take my time, don't worry, refine this soul orb first. How could Jinli not be in a hurry, but Shuanghan had said so, and it was true that he had been here for so many years. She took a deep breath to calm herself down. Shuanghan raised his head slightly, thought for a while, and then said nostalgically, if we want to start from the beginning, it should start from the time I left the customs. As we all know, Sword Patriarch Shuanghan is a cultivating madman and martial idiot. In her daily life, apart from practicing and retreating, she is fighting and fighting. And the gods have a long time, and a retreat may last hundreds or even thousands of years. This time, it was Shuanghan who gained something in the way of swordsmanship and started a long retreat. If it was normal, when she finished her retreat, she would either go to find an opponent to fight, or go to her old friend Yeshen and ask for a few jars of spirits brewed by him. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Koi Fairy Wife is Sweet as Honey, Love from the Koi Goddess. Author, Su Xiaozhaji. Chapter 934. Few people know that Yeshen's gentle temperament can brew the strongest wine in the entire God realm. Shuanghan was able to become friends with him, and the wine he brewed was indisputable. But this time, Shuanghan realized something was wrong as soon as he left the customs. It's so wrong. She stood on the top of her Jianj mountain, looking up at the gray sky. The wind blew her long hair and blue shirt, bringing a cold touch. She closed her eyes, then opened them again, and the scene of this chaotic god realm appeared in front of her. She saw many souls crying, many souls praying, and many souls fighting. Xuanghan looked down at Jinli. I went to see Yeshen later and found out that so many things happened when I was in retreat. Xuanghan suddenly stretched out her hand, and a long silver sword appeared in her hand. The long sword was not out of its sheath, and she was holding it in her hand, but the air around her became cold at this moment. The next moment, Jinli's head hurt. Xuanghan hit her on the top of the head with the blade of the sword. Jinli looked at her blankly. Xuanghan looked at her with a smile. There is a little fool who trades his own life for 1,000 years of safety for some irrelevant guys. Do you know? Jinli blushed, lowered her head and covered her head, and said nothing. But at the next moment, Xuanghan said, "It's more than that. I heard that this little fool has good luck. Even after using that kind of magic, the spirit still stays. There is only a little real spirit. I don't know where it came from. The problem is that it fell into a crack in space, and no one knows where it went." Jinli already knew this. Bai Jinli was her. In terms of preparation, Bai Jinli was the fragment of her true spirit. Because it was a fragment and her soul was incomplete, she was so stupid. It was precisely because of this willingness that when Jinli's soul arrived in that world, no trace of Bai Jinli's soul could be found. Xuanghan looked at her reaction. "Do you think you are great?" Jinli shook her head. "I never think so." Xuanghan nodded. "Fortunately, you didn't say anything about abandoning the small self for the big self just now, otherwise, I would definitely hit you again." When Jinli heard this, she quickly covered the top of her head and asked innocently, "Why?" "You ask why," Xuanghan said indifferently, "then I will tell you why. You gave up your life to fulfill your righteousness. But have you ever thought about the living?" Living? Jinli knew who the living person she was talking about was referring to. "I'm sorry for him," she whispered. Xuanghan was not polite. "You are indeed sorry for him, you are sorry for that Pixiu, and you are also sorry for your father Tiandeo. They don't want to tell you what they did, and they don't want you to feel guilty, so I will be the villain." Xuanghan raised his head, took a sip of wine, and sneered, "Anyway, I never want to be a good person." Jinli raised her head and looked at Xuanghan closely. "Senior Xuanghan, please tell me the truth." Because of that sip of strong wine, Xuangleng's pale cheeks flushed a little. But she was not drunk. Frost and Cold Sword Master never gets drunk. She lay on her back on the stone and sighed. "After you died, your heavenly Deo Father spent 100,000 years of cultivation to keep your true spirit alive." Jinli's heart trembled, and she suddenly raised her head. "Papa Tiandeo never told you," Xuanghan took her words. Jinli nodded. "The koi fairy wife is sweet as honey, love from the koi goddess." Author, Sushao Zheji. Chapter 935. Xuanghan sneered, "That idiot, what did he do? How could he tell others?" When she said this, there was a little pain in her eyes and a little bit of resentment, but it wasn't because of this incident. She looked at Jinli. "Your Tiandeo father lost 100,000 years of cultivation, and your little Taoist companion is even more remarkable." There was a bad premonition in Jinli's heart. "What?" "Xuanghan, if you want you to fully recover, you must be short of something, let alone a true spirit. But this space is turbulent, connecting hundreds of millions of small worlds, who knows where your true spirit will fall? Spatial turbulence is a place that no one can figure out and control. No matter how accurate the divination is, your position cannot be calculated. Therefore, if you want to find your true spirit, you can only let an existence close to you go in and find you yourself." Jinli's face changed. She already understood what Xuanghan meant. She suddenly remembered the conversation she had with Lu Zhenjia when she returned to the heaven realm. He didn't allow himself to flow back to the heavens across space. Because that taste is not good. She didn't take this sentence to heart at the time, but now that she heard Xuanghan's words and recalled this sentence, she realized what Lu Zhenjia's words really meant. "Because I have felt that pain, I don't want you to experience it. Shuanghan tilted his head to look at her, gave her time to buffer, and then asked again, the rest, do you still want to hear? Jinli, of course, Senior Shuanghan, you are right. If you don't tell me, no one will really tell me. If they don't tell her, she will never know how much someone has paid for her. Strictly speaking, Shuanghan is not a talkative person. But Jinli was very pleasing to her eyes, and she had been in this ghost place for tens of thousands of years, so it was really boring. After finally meeting someone who can talk, I can't stop talking. I don't know much about your affairs. I only know that your Taoist companion has been wandering in the turbulent space for hundreds of years, and it seems that he has identified a few places. Shuanghan doesn't remember such trivial things very well. Clearly, I stopped and thought about it carefully. Is it 3 or 4 places? 4, Jinli said. Shuanghan looked at her in surprise. How do you know? Jinli replied, when I went back to the heaven realm, I met one, and I was drawn closer to that world. Lu Zhenjie told me about it. Shuanghan said oh, nodded and asked, then did you see your Taoist companion inside? Jinli nodded. She was a little puzzled. How did you know? Shuanghan looked at her sideways. Are you sure you want to listen? The truth is another knife. Jinli. She took a breath and looked at Shuanghan. Don't make fun of me. All right, let me tell you, Shuanghan said, your true spirit may just fall somewhere in these worlds. No one knows when it will be reincarnated, but the space is chaotic. Very, if you miss it this time, you may not be able to find it next time. You should know this, right? Jinli nodded. She guessed something, so Lu Zhenjie. That's why Lu Zhenjie split his soul into 4 parts and entered the reincarnation of these 4 small worlds. The only purpose of their existence is to wait for you. The koi fairy wife is sweet as honey, love from the koi goddess. Author, Sushao Zheji. Chapter 936. Lu Zhenjie split his soul into 4 parts, and entered a small world of reincarnation. The only purpose of their existence is to wait for you. What if you don't wait? If you don't wait, just keep waiting, reincarnated from generation to generation. These 2 sentences pierced Jinli's heart like a sharp knife. The pain of schizophrenia, she knew it well. Because of her almost sacrificial technique back then, she felt the pain of being stripped of her soul from her body. The pain in the soul is far stronger than the pain in the body. But she was just that one. After that, she lost consciousness and didn't remember anything. According to what Senior Shuanghan said, Lu Zhenjie split his soul and sent him into the small world until he waited for her. That doesn't mean that from her fall to her resurrection to her return to the heavens, he has been enduring such pain for tens of thousands of years. When she was pulled into the Tianyu world, it's no wonder that Lu Zhenjie had such a shocked and clear expression. No wonder, he didn't stop him. Because Lu Zhenjie knew that place, and knew that there would be no danger for her to go there. Lu Zhenjie in Tianyu, he is both Lu Zhenjie and not Lu Zhenjie. It can also be said that he has become a ray of obsession. He was separated from Lu Zhenjie's body, and his obsession was born in order to wait for Jinli to appear. Jinli sat on the ground in a daze, remembering how he left in the end. She promised the young emperor to marry him. At that time, the young emperor had already decided to let her go. He wanted to possess Jinli, but in the end he chose to let her go because of her wishes. He only asked for a big marriage. Asterisk. Shuanghan looked at Jinli's face and asked, "Does your heart hurt?" Jinli nodded. Shuanglang snorted, "Now I know that my heart hurts. He just endured a little suffering, and you are so sad. Have you ever thought about how much his heart hurt when you abandoned him and begged to die for the sake of all sentient beings?" Jinli felt both ashamed and a little strange. I always feel that when Senior Shuanghan said these words, there was a trace of resentment. But why is she angry? She remembered that she and Lu Genja didn't have any contact with the sword ancestor. Of course, in the eyes of the sword ancestor, they junior people might not have been taken seriously by her. So, who is she blaming? Also, with her strength, why has she been trapped in this abyss of gods for so many years? Jinli shook her head and put aside all these distracting thoughts, not daring to gossip about this bad-tempered senior. She asked cautiously, then, what happened later, do you know? Later? Shuanghan snorted and laughed, I don't know what happened after that. Jinli looked at her blankly. Shuanghan put down the jug, looked at the gray sky, and said calmly, later, I felt bored, went out for a stroll, watched a flower bloom, and met a friend. I think this dog Tiandeo is really annoying. Jinli looked at the senior in surprise, who looked like a lone star in the cold moon, and said a dog's way of life, but it didn't make people feel vulgar. She even had a little admiration in her heart. After all, not everyone has the guts to add the word dog in front of the word Tiandeo. Seeing her appearance, Shuanghan was a little amused, surprised. Jinli nodded honestly, a little bit. Shuanghan's smile deepened, however, you are so surprised by a sentence of dog heaven. If you knew what I did behind, wouldn't you want to jump up? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Koi Fairy Wife is sweet as honey, love from the Koi Goddess. Author, Sushao Zheji. Chapter 937. Jinli felt that the sentence smacked of causing trouble. But curiosity still made her ask, then what did you do? Shuanghan smiled lightly, it's nothing, I just think that heavenly Dao is too disgusting, so I gave it a sword and sent it to see the law. Jinli really jumped up. She covered her mouth, looked at Shuanghan in shock, and wrote a few words on her entire face, are you joking? Shuangleng looked back at her indifferently, do you think I'm joking? Jinli put down her hand, still in shock. She didn't know whether she should be shocked by Senior Shuanghan's audacity or admire her strength. After all, when all beings in the Chaos God realm hated the Dao of Heaven the most, they were only thinking about how to seal it. Of course, this is also related to no one thinking that they can kill Tiandeo. But Shuanghan did just that. Not only did she do this, but she succeeded. Jinli hadn't asked the result yet, but she knew from Shuanghan's appearance that Senior Shuanghan should have succeeded. You are really... Jinli was speechless for a while, and finally could only give Shuanghan a thumbs up, it's amazing. Excellent, Shuanghan didn't know what to think of, and laughed mockingly. She looked all over the world, then lowered her head to look at herself, if it's really amazing, I won't be in this ghost place for tens of thousands of years. Jinli had never dared to ask this question. Now that Shuanghan had mentioned it, she tentatively asked, you are in the abyss of gods because... Shuanghan admitted it very readily, it's because I cut the way of heaven, and I was punished. Jinli stood up solemnly, and made a big salute to Shuanghan, Senior is righteous. Shuanghan waved his hands, stop, put down your hands, and sit down. I don't have any sense of righteousness. I beheaded that dog not for the sake of sentient beings, but purely because it makes me uncomfortable. Jinli. She still said seriously, no matter what the original intention of the senior is, you have indeed saved all beings in the Chaos God realm. Frost and Cold suddenly became sick. She glanced at Jinli, shook her head and said, I've told you almost everything I can tell you. 700 years after I killed Tiandeo, I was suppressed here. After such a long time, what has become of God realm, look, I don't even remember. Hearing the dejection in her words, Jinli said quickly, after so many years, can't you go out? When I go out, ask my Tiandeo father, Jinli suddenly stopped talking. Because she saw Shuanghan smiled. She came to see Xuanghan this time, and he laughed a lot. It's the first time that it's so fun to be ridiculous. Jinli was stunned for a moment. Only then did she realize that Frost and Cold Sword Master shouldn't be cold. She clearly should be like this, laughing freely, high-spirited and romantic. This is like the lawless patriarch of all soldiers in the rumors, like the sword patriarch Xuanghan who can kill the heavens with a single sword just because he is unhappy. She stared blankly at such Xuanghan, and Xuanghan's sneer sounded in her ears. You heavenly father? Does he dare to come to see me? Jinli. This discourse. She wanted to ask something, but Xuanghan lay down again, with her back facing her, her long hair hanging on the ground, just like when she first saw the senior. You have finished fusing the soul beads here, then go. Xuanghan's faint voice sounded. These were the last words Xuanghan said to her. The koi fairy wife is sweet as honey, love from the koi goddess. Author, Sushao Zheji. Chapter 938. Jinli stayed in Zongshan Yuan for a long time after that. Xuanghan has always maintained the posture of lying on the stone and sleeping. Jinli didn't know if she was really sleeping, but it was obvious that the other party didn't want to talk to her anymore. Standing up from the ground, she felt the full power in her body. The divine power in that soul orb had been almost absorbed and fused by her. Facing the frost and cold, Jinli saluted respectfully, "Thank you, senior," during this time. The person in front of him didn't respond. Jinli waited for a while, and then saluted again. "The junior has something to do, so I will leave first. If I have time in the future, I will visit the senior." Xuanghan still didn't respond, so Jinli turned and left. When I came here, I thought this place was lifeless, so quiet and desolate that it was scary, but when I went out, probably because I stayed here for a while, Jinli felt that the abyss of the gods was not as scary as before. But she couldn't bear to be left alone in this kind of place. Jinli thought about Senior Xuanghan, took a deep breath, and decided to wait until he got out and asked Tiandao what happened back then. She came out very well all the way. At the entrance, he saw Lu Zhenjie standing there. He still maintained the same appearance as when he sent Jinli in that day. Jinli even thought, this man won't be standing like this for so many days, right? No one should be so stupid. But Jinli thought about what Xuanghan said to him, and felt, Lu Zhenjie is really that stupid. She stopped and looked at Lu Zhenjie carefully from such a distance. A completely different look than before. Bringing the memories of the previous life with me, I looked at this former lover. His appearance didn't change much, and his demeanor looked more indifferent and calm than before. Yes, after all, tens of thousands of years have passed. How did he pass these tens of thousands of years? Jinli stared at him blankly, thinking in a mess, until Lu Zhenjie noticed her gaze and turned around. Jinli, he looked very happy. You came out. Jinli didn't speak. Lu Zhenjie's surprised expression turned into confusion, and he also raised his legs and walked over. Jinli, what's wrong with you? Jinli recovered from her daze. She looked at the figure walking towards the side, and as if she had come to her senses, she suddenly ran towards Lu Zhenjie. He threw people into his arms. Feeling this rare initiative to throw himself into his arms, Lu Zhenjie still maintained his own doubts. How is this? Shh, don't talk, I don't want to hear it now. Close to him, Jinli said softly. She hugged his waist tightly, raised her head, her big eyes were full of stars. Hug me, Lu Zhenjie. Lu Zhenjie was startled. He looked down into those eyes, and with just one look, he understood. Without saying anything more, he lowered his head and hugged him tightly. Both of them have great strength, so strong that they seem to want to hug each other into their bodies. This strength does not make people feel comfortable, but the two think it is not enough. I can't wait to use more force. I can't really embed the other party into my body. Life after life is entangled. Never part again. The Koi fairy wife is sweet as honey, love from the Koi goddess. Author, Sushao Zheji. Chapter 939. Neither of them let go of each other. Jinli leaned against Lu Zhenjie, closed his eyes, and listened to his heartbeat. Boom. 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 Lu Zhenjie let go of her a little, kissed her forehead again, and asked softly, "You remember?" Ye Jinli closed her eyes and replied. As soon as the sentence fell, she felt that the arms around her waist tightened again. "You remembered?" Lu Zhenjie repeated. Jinli took a deep breath. "Yes, I remembered." She didn't ask Lu Zhenjie how he got here all these years. He didn't bother to verify what he had done for himself. "I just want to be like this," hug him quietly, and feel the hard-won warmth between the two of them. The two didn't say anything, they held hands and returned to Tianke together. This was Jinli's home, and the two had lived here for a long, long time. "Don't you have anything to ask me?" The two sat by the Tianke lake, and Lu Zhenjie looked at Jinli nervously. Jinli looked at him. "I wanted to ask you a lot of questions, and even wanted to beat you up. But now that I see you, I suddenly don't want to ask any more." Lu Zhenjie heaved a sigh of relief, but also felt a little lost. "Why?" Jinli grabbed his hand and held it tightly. "Because I looked at you and felt that it would be the best thing for me to sit here with you and watch the sun rise and the moon set." Lu Zhenjie choked for breath. Jinli took her hand and put it on her heart. "Lu Zhenjie, in the future, we promise each other that you will not do stupid things again, and I will not do stupid things again. We will be good in the future, and we will always be together. Okay?" Lu Zhenjie looked at her silently for a while. His eyes were a little red, but it seemed like an illusion when he looked closely. Jinli was pulled into his arms suddenly, and she heard his voice whispering in her ears, "Okay." Jinli closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of her embrace, raised her arms, and hugged him harder, harder. The silence of Tianke was broken by a cheerful voice. The girl with a pair of long rabbit ears bounced up to Tianke with a small flower basket. "Master Jinli, Master Jinli, I'm Xiaoying, are you there?" a cheerful voice echoed among the mountains. The person who came out was not the one that Rabbit Xiaoying was expecting, but Lu Zhenjie in a black robe. When Rabbit Xiaoying saw this person's figure, she trembled and her ears perked up. This is the instinctive reaction of the weak to the strong. "My lord. I'm here to see Master Jinli," she said tremblingly. Lu Zhenjie looked down at the little rabbit fairy, and asked, "What are you doing with Jinli?" Little Rabbit Immortal tremblingly raised the flower basket in his hand. "I heard that Master Jinli came back and picked some danzu fruits. These are the first batch of ripe fruits this year, and Master Jinli likes to eat them the most." Hearing what she said, Lu Zhenjie took a look into the flower basket, and there really were clusters of bright red and beautiful fruits lying in it. "Go in, don't disturb her," he said lightly. Little Rabbit Immortal let out an eh, as if being pardoned. She quickly slipped past Lu Zhenjie with her basket in her arms. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Koi fairy wife is sweet as honey, love from the Koi goddess. Author, Sushao Zheji. Chapter 940. When he ran to the edge of Tianke, Little Rabbit Fairy saw Jinli. Jinli was wearing a white coat, lying on the edge of Tianke with his eyes closed. Her long black hair didn't stand upright, but was scattered behind her back with a little dampness, and the white undershirt was slightly wet, sticking to her body snugly. Hearing the movement, she opened her eyes and looked at her with a smile. Her face was a little red, and her whole body was full of laziness. It's Xiaoying. For some reason, Little Rabbit Fairy blushed when he saw Jinli like this. Master Jinli was clearly still the same, and he didn't feel any different from usual, but his whole body was inexplicable. There was an inexplicable feeling that made people blush. This kind of feeling, a simple little rabbit can't express it. She blushed and stammered, "This is a freshly picked danzu fruit." "Master Jinli, you eat?" Jinli smiled and thanked her, "Thank you, Xiaoying." Xiaoying shook her head, "I didn't pick it alone, there were also the little sisters in the clan. We live in Shenshan and have been blessed by Master Jinli. We must thank Master Jinli." While the two were talking, Little Rabbit Fairy saw that frighteningly imposing man in black walking over again. He didn't look at Little Tuxian at all, but at Jinli, and asked with concern, "Are you tired?" Jinli shook her head and said coquettishly, "I want to eat fruit." Then the man in black squatted down, picked up the flower basket, and went to another place to wash the red vermilion fruit seriously. Little Rabbit Fairy stared blankly at this scene, and after a while, her face flushed, and she suddenly realized that it was unnecessary for her to stay here. She stumbled to say goodbye to Jinli and left faster than when she came. Asterisk. After Lu Zhenjia washed the danzu guo and brought it up, he asked Jinli considerately, "Does your waist hurt?" Jinli glanced at him and snorted, "What's the use of asking now? I told you to stop before and didn't see you listen to me." Lu Zhenjia. He knew he was wrong, touched his nose, and dared not speak. Seeing this, Jinli snorted again, and while pinching a piece of fruit into her mouth, she muttered, "Sure enough, I was right, men are big pigs." After saying this, she added another sentence, "Except for my heavenly father. Father Tiandao is the best and best person." As soon as Tiandao's father was mentioned, Jinli remembered what Senior Shuanghan said in the Abyss of the Gods, that Tiandao's father had spent 100,000 years of cultivation to keep his soul immortal. She felt a little uncomfortable thinking about it. "But there is another thing." She asked Lu Zhenjia, "Senior Shuanghan, do you know?" "Senior Shuanghan," Lu Zhenjia was a little surprised, "why do you suddenly want to ask her?" He thought for a while, perhaps some of these later gods don't know her, but the ancient gods, and the earlier batch of gods, shouldn't everyone know her name? Whether it's the reputation of being warlike, or that shocking sword. It's enough to make people never forget. Jinli said, "I saw Senior Shuanghan in the Abyss of Gods, she is really a..." She thought for a while and said, "A very special person." Lu Zhenjia just laughed, "Of course it's special, any ordinary person can kill Tiandao with one sword." It's not just that. Jinli recalled Shuanghan's appearance, and asked Lu Zhenjia curiously, "Senior Shuanghan was suppressed in the Abyss of Gods, what happened?" "The koi fairy wife is sweet as honey, love from the koi goddess." Author, Sushao Zhaji. Chapter 941. Hearing her ask about this, Lu Zhenjia paused for a moment before saying, "Actually, I don't know much about this matter." He said, "Back then, most of my mind was on you, and I didn't pay much attention to the outside world. I only know that after Senior Frosthan killed the heavenly Dao with a sword, the god realm was in chaos for a while. Hundreds of years later, it was reported that Yeshenzun became the successor of heavenly Dao, and a few hundred years later, Senior Shuanghan was suppressed in the Abyss of Gods. What he knew was also the version known by the gods in the Chaos God realm. Everyone guessed that Shuanghan was punished by the law because he killed the heavenly Dao and was punished by the gods. But Jinli remembered the way she laughed at that time, and always felt that things were not that simple. After thinking about it, she decided to meet Tiandao's father. But before Jinli could go to see Tiandao, her father Tiandao came to the door by himself. No, to be precise, it came to the door with the rolling thunder. The reason is also very simple: the juicy Chinese cabbage, which has been raised for tens of thousands of years, was arched by a big pig's hoof. Which old father would be happy? Jinli wanted to persuade her, but was stopped by Lu Zhenjia. He smiled wryly and said, "Don't stop it. If you don't stop him, he will get angry and hit me dozens of times and the matter will be over. If you stop it, it will be endless." It has to be said that a man has a more thorough understanding of a man's mind. Jinli watched helplessly as Lu Zhenjie was slashed 7 or 49 times, all of which were the most powerful Zixiao divine thunder. When the thunder was over, Lu Zhenjie disappeared. He left a message for Jinli and came back to her in a few days. Jinli didn't know why. Lu Zhenjie cursed in secret, the insidious way of heaven, just slashing in the face. He is not afraid of other injuries, but the scars caused by Zixiao Shenlii cannot be eliminated by magic at all, and he can only wait for it to heal naturally. His injuries were all over his face again. How could Lu Zhenjie, who knew Jinli's personality and preferences, dare to let Jinli see himself disfigured? Without waiting for Tiandao to express, he took the initiative to avoid it. This kind of injury, every 10 days and half a month, will not heal at all. It can be seen from this that no matter how impartial and selfless the way of heaven is, it always has its own careful thinking when it comes to principled issues such as the big pig's hooves of its daughter. Jinli saw Tiandao again. It was the same small island, lonely, surrounded by endless water. A white-haired man in a purple robe stands by the water. Looking at the back, Jinli suddenly realized, in the past tens of thousands of years, every time he saw Tiandao's father, he looked like this. He seems to have never changed, always staying alone in this place, facing the water alone. In the past, Jinli didn't think anything was wrong, because in her perception, the way of heaven was supposed to be like this. It would be strange if Father Tiandao had his own emotions, anger, sorrow, and joy like other ordinary gods. But now she knows that Father Tiandao was not like this from the beginning. Obviously, the deity in memory is so gentle and kind, and he is the god with the best temper in the entire Chaos God realm. The comparison between today and evening makes people feel even more uncomfortable. Papa Tiandao, she called her softly. Tiandao turned his head and looked at her gently. Remember? Jinli nodded and sniffed. Well, and, I heard from Senior Shuanghan that you spent 100,000 years of cultivation to keep my soul.